is on your MCR assignment for July 2017 and the core task, which in many ways is fairly straightforward. The examiner wants you to focus on the concept of character and personality, which in most cases is one and the same. And we all know that character and personality is probably the foundation stone of building a corporate reputation. Examiner also wants you to consider specifically culture, and we all know culture is a subcomponent of a character of an organization. He also wants you to focus on identity of the organization, how these factors would influence a corporate reputation. So in summary, this is at the heart of what the corporate reputation framework is. So if you look at your textbook, chapter 1 is going to clearly elaborate how these components are at play when you're trying to build a reputation, or how these factors influence a corporate reputation. So I strongly recommend you read your chapter 1 of your textbook, and you also look at some of the key textbooks to understand the different concepts surrounding corporate character and personality, corporate identity, and how specifically these factors could influence your corporate reputation. So with that type of research, the theoretical research, and some practical examples that are very current, you will be ready to tackle this task. So task 1.1 is a conceptual discussion, as always. So the examiner is going to see the depth of your research. Are you familiar with multiple authors who've spoken about these concepts? Are you familiar with case studies related to these concepts? Are you familiar with any research related to this? So with that type of background, you could tackle task 1.1. Now here what you're trying to do is write a report addressed to your CEO, where you're going to give clarity to the CEO how the corporate character, the corporate identity could and would influence a corporate reputation. So with that in mind, you got to think about the structure of this task. How do you start? What do you have at the core of the task? And how do you plan to conclude? Now the concepts that you bring here are mostly the concepts you're going to carry along the rest of the assignment. So you have to think about it carefully. Once again, if you haven't read the textbooks and haven't understood different concepts, authors, models, it's not going to be a fairly insightful discussion. So do your reading first. Now, when you look at getting the attention of a CEO, at the top of this task, you might want to start this report with an example of how a corporate culture or a change in identity has impacted that company's reputation. I mean, we all taken the classic example of the personality of the US government with the change of presidents has impacted the overall reputation of the United States of America around the world. How the identity of a billionaire who has a different style of communication, a different set of behaviors, and of course a different set of symbols compared to the predecessor has a direct impact on the reputation of a country like United States of America. So likewise, think of an example as a way to get clarity to the interlink of the elements that you are about to expose to your CEO. The other route to the start of this task could be a conceptual discussion to show a framework or two and find the link between the components, maybe from Van. But you got to set the platform up front. Now after you set that platform of the interlink between the components, you could start your critical evaluation of each sub-element. For example, culture. Now culture is clearly a part of the personality and character. So you got to evaluate the concept of culture using multiple authors. You got to show how some authors agree with each other, which authors contradicts. So at the end of it, you're very clear that what are the components of a corporate culture and how a culture could impact the corporate reputation. Similarly, the more complex area of identity, which includes areas like symbolism, communication, and communication has sub-elements, and subtle areas like behavior. And different authors' views about identity, because some authors use identity in very different contexts. And you compare and contrast these authors, and you finally conclude what identity is all about. So there's clarity to your CEO. And importantly, once again, how identity could and would be impacting your reputation. For example, if a company goes through a total brand change, brand outlook change, color change of the brand logos and other nomenclature, you would be able to show how that impacted that organization's reputation. Change of a CEO would change the behaviors of an organization. Trump is a classic example. Same way when Jack Welch relinquished his role as chairman of General Electrics, or the taking over of Jeff Immelt from Steve Jobs at Apple. I mean, these changes, the communications, the behaviors, in other words, the externally projected identity, and you can clearly show some of the reputational impacts of this. So you can bring a fairly current examples to establish this fact. So after you set the principles of how culture, identity impacts a reputation of an organization, you would be able to relate it to a couple of wide examples to show that these principles you're talking about is beyond profit organizations. It would impact not-for-profits, countries, celebrities, individuals, and they're universal. So that clarity has to be achieved at the end of this task.